Now, a year ago, world leaders gathered in Paris to agree a landmark deal to tackle climate change. Today, that deal came into force. UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon described it as a historic moment for the world, but he also said this was a race against time. Our science editor David Shukman considers the agreement and what effect it could have.
Every country on the planet is now signed up for the very first time to try to tackle global warming, amid growing evidence of the impacts of rising temperatures. This NASA animation dramatically captures the retreat of the Arctic sea ice over the last 30 years. And this graph shows the rise in the global average temperature year by year. The further out the lines go, the warmer the Earth is. And you can see how in some decades there wasn't much of a change, but how in recent years the increase accelerated. This year is on course to be a record.
L'accord de Paris pour le climat est accepté.
So there were jubilant scenes in Paris last December when agreement was reached on a new global effort.
Paris is perhaps the greatest singular global agreement we have ever seen in our history. It's brought together politicians with a singular idea that we have to transform ourselves, to cut emissions, to survive on the planet. But it is an enormous challenge.
The challenge is to switch away from fossil fuels like coal, because burning them gives off the greenhouse gases said to have caused most of the recent warming, and to turn to green energy instead. But that isn't easy. The Paris Agreement is described as a landmark because it's the first to involve every country in the world. They've each submitted a plan for cutting or limiting their emissions of greenhouse gases. Now, these are entirely voluntary, but they are reviewed publicly every 5 years, which could add pressure on governments to make deeper cuts in future. Now, what might this achieve? Well, the aim is to limit the rise in the global average temperature to 2 degrees compared to pre-industrial times, or 1.5 degrees if possible. But already we're heading towards that with a rise of 1 degree. And if you add up all the promises to act under the agreement, we're on course for an increase of 2.9 to 3.4 degrees, which scientists say could lead to dangerous impacts in future. To show their support for the Paris Agreement, the bosses of oil companies made a rare appearance together, pledging $1 billion for low-carbon energy. Critics say that's not nearly enough.
We don't want to just throw money at a problem. We want to get the governance around it. It's not easy to have 10 companies all work together, and now our technology teams are all working together. I expect this to grow. I expect it to join. I expect it to leverage with universities and government funds. It's the beginning.
Tonight, as Paris celebrates the agreement, all eyes are actually on America, because Donald Trump says if he's elected, he'd pull out of the deal. China is furious. There's a lot at stake. David Shukman, BBC News.